Welcome back to World's Best Gardens, and today we're looking at Hamilton Gardens, and this was designed by landscape architect Dr. Peter Sergel. Hamilton Gardens are in Hungerford Crescent, which is in Hamilton, New Zealand, which is about an hour and a half away from Auckland. Now, Dr. Peter Sergel was responsible for designing many of the gardens throughout Hamilton Gardens, and he wrote up a management plan for Hamilton Council in about 1978 to put this together, which is quite a unique garden. It is basically a garden of about the evolution of gardens and civilizations, and it's divided into different themes. So the first one is the enclosed gardens, which we're walking through now, and this is basically inspired by the English flower garden of probably around about in the 1800s. Lots of flowers, herbaceous borders, high brick walls, little gazebos, roses, and those sort of plants are all connected up into sort of rooms throughout this garden. So it's a very flowery garden with also a lot of texture with the box hedging and formal layout. So this is the kind of a grey-green garden, and obviously we've got gardenias there which have white flowers. We've got a beautiful Pyrus salicifolia pendula, which is the weeping silverleaf pear, and we've got some nice places to sit, and it's all organized in a kind of symmetrical formal layout. So there was quite a few people walking around the garden, and this was the Monday morning, so it is a very popular garden. And this, as we're coming into now, is another part of this English flower garden, and it's more of with a path that leads around a central lawn area with a pond. Now the gardens themselves have been constructed in phases, and the cost and the implementation is mainly being done by the communities surrounding Hamilton. This is the Chinese Scholars Garden. It was one of the first gardens that was built, and it was built by generally funded by the Chinese people in Hamilton who came together and funded it, and I believe it cost somewhere in the vicinity of about $80,000, and that's quite cheap. Apparently these gardens now to create would be around about $1 million. So nice plants. We missed the wisteria flowering, but this is a Wisteria sinensis growing over the nice bridge there. And another themed garden around water, except this time we've got it in a kind of very irregular shapes and going for a more informal look rather than the formal look from the cottage garden. Just walk through the nice bamboo gateway there. Then we've got this the modernist theme. This is the sort of the early 20th century, where the middle class came up and were having outdoor living and swimming pools and barbecues, and this is reflective of this particular design. Now what's interesting is there is a video that's out from Peter Sergel, which is from Hamilton Gardens, which does show various sketches that he has done for that particular garden. Now this is a Japanese contemplation garden, and having seen some Japanese gardens recently, this was a pretty good replica, I thought. Of course, it's New Zealand's climate, and so the mosses are different, and we've got some clipped camellia hedges, azaleas that are clipped there that you can see in the background, nice boulders that are arranged on this sort of what's called like a Zen contemplation garden with a maple in the corner. Now as you walk through on the other side, you've got this really nice pond water feature with rocks and some of these little twisted pines, and it's a slightly different view. Again, most of these gardens can be well manicured. The gardens themselves, I believe, are maintained by Hamilton Council, but the rest of it is funded by the community and Hamilton Gardens themselves. So this is the Indian Charbar Garden. It was quite a nice garden with a little water feature there, and it also was sitting on top of the hill. So as you panned around from there, this was looking over down the bank, and down the bank there's the Waikato River. So these gardens sort of border the Waikato River. This next garden is the Italian Renaissance Gardens. These are all part of these enclosed gardens or paradise gardens, and just some nice archways and pergolas that lead you down. And then you have this little bit here that you were coming into now, which apparently was inspired by some of the Italian designers. Nicely symmetrical layout again, and you're walking down these steps, and then you've got water features, a ficus pumila that's growing up the wall. Terracotta pots and some citrus that are located throughout the garden. So it's a pretty nice garden to walk around. You've got various little plants and plantings. Most of these are little annuals. So a lot of these gardens do look good, and probably the best time to see these gardens are in the spring and in the summer and autumn. Winter, you're not really going to get as much colour. This was another part. This is a little place where you can they do a few plays and things. So we're going on now to the productive gardens. These are gardens that are more about plants and food. And so Hamilton Gardens was a Maori site for a particular pā site called Te Parapara, and we're just walking down there now. So I think this is quite nice to include this as part of one of the gardens as a productive garden, and really it shows how the early civilizations of Maori used to grow kumara, which was their staple diet, and on these little mounds getting a good growth of kumara, which obviously they used to eat and would be their main food source, apart obviously from fish. We've got sustainable backyard garden with lots of different fruit trees and lots of great ideas. What I liked about this garden is there's so many different gardens and styles. You can grab lots of different ideas depending on what sort of garden you're into. Obviously, if you're into self-sufficiency, this is a great garden, and because you're going to use the garden for productivity and for food. This is the kitchen gardens, and huge amounts of vegetables there, which I presume that they would use in the cafe. This herb garden again was a pretty nice layout, symmetrical layout, like lots of herb gardens seem to be. And I think what was quite cool is that they had a culinary section. They had herbs that were good for cosmetics and medicinal herbs, and then potpourri, which I thought was a nice way to sort of divide the different types of uses of the herbs. Now, Egyptian gardens, which you wouldn't normally, I guess, associate with productive food type of gardens, but this one was. It had lots of plants like parsley and various plants that were useful. Obviously you can see some onions and some lettuces down there. So we've gone now, and so that's from the productive gardens. So the last gardens we're going to look at is the fantasy gardens. These were designed on and inspired by things like a fantasy, like from a novel from some writings from Catherine Mansfield, so a New Zealand writer, I believe. And this was actually quite nice. It was that house there, I believe it was only a facade, but you've gone back to early 20th century. This again, a lot of these gardens are for, they are the rich people putting in the look of the garden, and going back to a central water feature, but in a formal layout. And we've got things like this car here. That car apparently was donated by a local car club. I believe it was the Ford Car Club, and it's a nice little ornament feature. And then you've got this setup of the tennis court, and then that was all ready for the summer party. We've got I thought this was looking really splendid. That was the laburnum, and this was just the Tudor garden, just a knot garden full of box hedging. And then we had other gardens like the landscape gardens of the early 18th century, strolling around, and a tropical garden. These are more collections of different types of tropical plants, but still good to use, and nice to sort of see as we walked around. Coming to the end of this garden now, and there were probably another 2 or 3 maybe gardens that we missed, but regular maintenance is happening here on those Brazilian coconut palms, and this is coming to the end now, and here we've got this really nice feature showing all the different avenues to the different gardens. So well worth a visit, and highly recommend this garden to go and see when you're in New Zealand, and especially if you're in Hamilton.